familiar to most of you. You've just kind of heard the condensed version of the story, and probably most of you, yep, I know that one. And as I do when we have a familiar scripture, I challenge you not to just say, oh, I know that, and kind of tune out. Because we tend to do that. But instead, and I've got to clear things here so I don't end up flat on my face. That would be kind of embarrassing, but I would recover. I challenge you to listen closely. Maybe for something you haven't heard, or maybe sometimes there's things we think are in there that really aren't. You know, something that we've just developed in our thoughts over the years. So some background on the story. John the Baptist has been killed. Jesus tries to retreat by himself for a little while, but the crowds just follow him. And then the disciples, with the help of a blessing from Jesus, feed 5,000 men plus all the women and children that are there with just 2 little fish and 5 loaves of bread, and then they have 12 baskets of leftovers. And so then that's where we pick up with Matthew's Gospel, chapter 14, and we're going to read verses 22 through 33. It says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The word of God for all God's people. Thanks be to God. Now, who here likes boats? Who likes boats? I'm seeing a lot of hands from those of you who are sitting outside who likes boats. You know, I do, but I'm a little leery of them. And the reason is because many years ago, just to tell you how many years ago, it was the day that Elvis Presley died. So you know it was many years. And it was the summer between my 7th and 8th grade. And I was in the band, and our band director had invited those of us who were going into the 8th grade to come to the high school's end of summer party. They had been in summer band all year, having a party to celebrate the end of summer. We went to Tanglewood Park in Clemens. Anybody of you know that, who've been to the Light Festival? Well, this was before the Light Festival. But we went to Tanglewood Park. We were there pretty much all day into the night. And sometime that afternoon, a friend and I decided we were going to go down to Mallard Lake there at Tanglewood. We were going to rent a canoe. Okay, we were going to go paddling across that lake. It didn't look hard. Neither of us had ever been in a canoe, but it really didn't look that hard. We watched people, all you did was took that paddle. You took a paddle, right? Just like this, and you just kind of paddle along, right? Nothing to it, right? Yeah, okay. Well, we pay for our 30 minutes on the lake. We go out there, my friend gets in, and I attempt to get in, and I do stress attempt, because I do not know what happened. I never knew. Didn't know then, do not know now. But when I tried to get into that canoe, I ended up something like this, with my feet in that canoe, my shoulders here on the dock. So guess which part was in the water? Yeah, and I was stuck. I couldn't get on in the boat. I couldn't get myself back up on the dock. So there I was hanging. Well, the guy who was working the dock, I think just a teenager, his summer job, he wasn't really impressed with me. And he grabbed me under the arms and kind of threw me on in. And he threw me so hard I thought I was going on over, face first the other way into the lake. But I managed to get stopped. So we, with me finally in the boat, we were off, right? What else can go wrong? We start paddling, and remember I said neither of us had ever been in a canoe before? We start paddling. It's not a one-time thing. First time two people have ever been in a canoe, just get in and start paddling and things go well. In our 30 minutes, I doubt we were maybe 20, 25 feet from the dock. We were close. We weren't far enough away that when they called us to come in after our 25 minutes or after our 30 minutes, we couldn't get the thing turned around. We had no clue how to turn it around to go back to the dock. And my newfound friend who was working the dock was once again not really too impressed. He had a pole with a hook on it. He managed to reach out, pull us back. That's how we got back. Great day there. To make it all worse, insult to injury, by the time we got back, my clothes weren't dry yet either. So I had to walk around, for a while out there with guess what part of me wet in front of those high school boys when I was 8th grade. Traumatic day. Quite a traumatic day. And I have been a little nervous about these boats since then. You can tell I'm still a little nervous about these boats. I like boats now, but I like the kind that you just walk on. A nice big pontoon boat is really good for me, but I stay sitting still, okay? I don't even on a pontoon boat get up and walk around like everybody else is doing. I stay sitting pretty still while I'm on it. Ever been like that? Ever been so scared of something, maybe so traumatized, that you're just scared to move? You're scared to do anything. You're just rather just sit still than do anything. Rather sit still than anything. The disciples were really scared that day. But they weren't scared because of the weather on the boat. They were, some of them at least there were professional fishermen. They knew how to handle those storms that came up. When that boat started kind of rocking with them a little bit, like this, and I'm rocking it, but I'm doing that very cautiously because I see the ground down there. But they knew how to handle it. When the storm came up, when those waves were going, the wind was against them and the waves was crashing alongside the boat, it may have caused a little anxiety for them, but it didn't paralyze them. They knew how to handle it. And usually that's what we think of here. They're scared of that storm, but when they see Jesus walking out there, that's when they get scared the most. John the Baptist has just been beheaded. They haven't seen Jesus for several hours. Have they then got to him too? So is this really Jesus? Is this a ghost? So Peter, good Peter, who's always just saying what comes to his mind, says, Jesus, if that's really you, call me to come out there to you. I want to come to you. And so Jesus says, come. Come on, it's okay. Just like he calls every one of us, come on. It's okay. I'm here for you. It doesn't matter if the storm is raging around us. Whatever's going on around us, whatever it is that you're scared of, that may be causing you fear, that may be causing your boat to rock a good bit. Whatever it is that might be paralyzing you. Come. It's okay. I got you. Come on. We live in times that are pretty scary. We live in times that there's a lot to cause us anxiety. And Jesus says, come on. It's me. It's me. I'm here with you. It's all right. Come. Come. Come on out here. And so Peter gets out of that boat. He gets out of it. The boat represented everything that was comfortable to those disciples, everything that was secure. They knew how to handle the storm. They knew how to handle the wind and the crashing waves. They were comfortable. They were secure. But walking on the water, let's face it, that's impossible. How many of us are going to go, out on a lake that we know is 30, 40, 50 feet deep? You're going to just crawl out of the boat and try to walk on that water? It's impossible. And they knew that. But here goes Peter, leaving his comfort, leaving his security, because Jesus has said, come on, come. He gets out of it. He gets out of that comfort and security. In reality, I'm much more comfortable and secure right here. But Peter left what was comfortable and secure for him to go out to Jesus. And when he gets out, he realizes what he's doing. He realizes, hey, I'm doing the impossible. Jesus has called me to come do this, and I'm doing it. And then he looks around and says, oh my, the storm is still going on around me. Jesus has got me in this, but look, the storm's still going on. I can't do this. I really can't do this. And he starts to sink. He starts to sink. And then what we all do when we start to sink, Jesus, save me. One hand raises him up, gets him back to the boat. You're okay. You are okay. How many times do we find ourselves in situations where we had left the comfort, maybe have been shoved out of the comfort and security of the things we know? It happened to all of us in March. With coronavirus, it happened to every one of us. We were shoved out of the comfort of things that we knew. How many of us were at first, okay, we got this, Jesus, we got this. But we were told to begin with a couple of weeks. Let's cancel church for a couple of weeks, right? But then as time has worn on, what's going on, Jesus? Help us. Help us, help us. Can we do this? I've told a couple of you, but not my last appointment, but the one before that. I'd only been there for a few months when we had a fire and the sanctuary and Sunday school rooms completely destroyed. The fellowship hall building was saved, and so through the whole rebuilding and all, we had to deal with just a fellowship hall, 2 offices, and a conference room. And there was one day in the process when I was on the phone with a friend of mine, a clergy friend, and I was just having a meltdown. It was too much at that point, and I was just having a meltdown. And I was going, I can't do this. I just cannot do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to lead a church through rebuilding after a fire. I don't know how to deal with their emotions from it. I don't know how. I'm not experienced in this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And when we're in one of those meltdowns, what is it that we're really looking for? We're looking for someone to kind of pat us on the back and say, of course you can do it, right? You're strong enough, you're smart enough, you can do it. That's what we're looking for, right? But this wise friend of mine, instead of that, in the midst of all of my, I can't do this, she said, of course you can't. Because if you could, you wouldn't need God. If any of us knew how to get through this whole virus thing, this whole pandemic thing, if we knew how to get through it on our own, we wouldn't need God through it, would we? If we knew how to get through all of the social unrest, all of the things that's going on within our society, all the things that's going on within our world, if we knew how to get through it, why would we need God? But it's that faith, that trust in God. When we cry out, Jesus, save me, He's there to reach out that hand, to pull us out of whatever it is that we are sinking in. Whatever has gotten us so fearful that we're sinking. He pulls us out. Pulls us out. Gets us back to whatever it is, wherever it is, that we're comfortable, where we can function, not to where we're comfortable, but gets us back to where we can function, to where we can go on again. He gets us back. And I can tell you right now, I am nowhere in what I have written out here. I am nowhere where my manuscript goes. Where Jesus calls us, you notice where He first called Peter. He didn't call him to stay right there in the boat, did He? Didn't call him to hunker down where he was nice and safe and comfortable. At the beginning of the virus, our bishop said, call church off for a couple of weeks. But then a couple of weeks didn't do it. Well, we just kind of ramped up in a couple of weeks. So we had to give out of our comfort zones, didn't we? We had to become creative in how we were going to have church. Well, we had to leave the comfort zone. We had to get into these, whether we were getting out of the boat or whether we were getting into these boats, wherever we were. I didn't do that one on purpose. I even scared my son on that one, see what he did with this. but, you know, he never calls us to come to our comfort zone. He never calls us to hunker down where we're safe and where we're comfortable. He calls us to trust him. He calls us to come to where he is, out in the midst of all of the people who are hurting. He calls us to trust him for our own fears, to trust him for our own anxieties, to trust him to care for us. And then he calls us to come on out there where there's a lost and hurting world who needs to hear of the love of Jesus Christ. He calls us to come to share his love with those who are sinking, with those who are drowning, because they don't know of the love. They don't know the one who calls us to come, the one who will reach out and take their hand and pull them up from sinking. They don't know him. And it's up to us to introduce him. And he calls us to come out there where we are uncomfortable. You know, there was, when we were in Reedsville, each Thanksgiving year, the soup kitchen was closed on Thanksgiving Day, and so there was a church in town that would do a Thanksgiving meal. And people would come into their fellowship hall, and then for those who couldn't come, they would have volunteers from other churches to deliver meals. And there was one year when we went up to get our delivery route, you know, some meals to deliver. The man who was handing them out kind of looks at me, and, you know, he's looking at what he's got, and he says, well, I don't know if you want to take these with the part of town that they're in. It's like, give them to me. You know, give them to me. Those people need food, just give them to me. You know, he calls us to go to places that we might not be comfortable, to places where we might not otherwise go, but places that need to hear of the love of Jesus Christ, places that need to see and feel the love of Jesus Christ. He calls us to come. And if we get out there and feel like we're sinking, he reaches down and he pulls us back up. You know, his love never fails. We can trust him always. Let us pray.